And let me also welcome you this morning. We're glad that you are with us on this holiday weekend, whether you're here in person or joining us online. Glad that you have chosen to worship with us this morning. And we do want to welcome the Dipple family and thank you for blessing our congregation and asking God's blessing on that. And if I can say, you sound like a pastor. David and I guess, have to work on our deeper voices. But as soon as you started praying, I was like, oh, now that's a great pastor voice. So we appreciate so much, not only your presence here, but your prayers for us as a congregation as we will commit our prayers to your son and his family and his grandson. You probably know this, but there's some people who say that we are living in an age of perpetual offense, where if you are looking to be offended, the good news is you will find it. You will find a way to feel offended. You don't have to look very far. And it used to be that we only did this with political leaders. It used to be that we would, see a politician somewhere, or maybe, an entertainment star, sports star, but someone in the public eye, and we would be offended by something that they would say or do. It would be easy to do that because they're in the public eye. So you hear what they say, you see what they do, and you can always find fault with something somewhere. But the reality is that now we are looking to be offended by just about everyone, everywhere. And in the process of that, we are looking to cut down, criticize, and cancel everyone. If you don't like what your child's teacher or coach says, let's just get them fired. You don't like what a friend posts on Facebook, then you silence them for 30 days. Not that they're going to know that, but you know that. You've canceled them for a while, or you simply unfriend them. Do you realize that for about the last decade or more, every year, there are articles that come out right around the time of Thanksgiving that give you talking points on how to deal with family members who voted differently than you did? We can't even gather at Thanksgiving or Christmas and not just be able to accept and love one another. We have to actually now have talking points on how to maybe critique or criticize or challenge someone who we simply disagree with. It's sad, really, that in our culture we can't just disagree anymore. Instead, as a culture, we look to disgrace those we disagree with. Or maybe we try to dismiss them. Many of us try to destroy them. That's the culture. That's where we are. It is into this culture, it is into this very way of interacting with one another that God calls us to live a radically different way, a different lifestyle. Into a culture that seeks to cancel one another, God is actually calling us to honor one another. Romans chapter 12, verse 10 says, "Be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves." Honor one another. Honor is an important virtue to God. Honor matters to God. And so honor begins our new message series on true virtues. Those virtues, those ways of thinking and acting and living that are important to God and have an impact on the culture, the family, the church, the community in which we live. Jesus, as you might anticipate, was both honored at times and dishonored at times. What's fascinating is that there's a story in the Gospel of Mark. There's a sequence of stories in the Gospel of Mark that follow one right after another where Jesus is honored and then immediately dishonored. And we learn a lot about honor through that. So in Mark chapter 5, Jesus is approached by a religious leader named Jairus. Jairus literally falls at Jesus' knees and begs him to heal his daughter. "Come with me, Jesus, and heal my daughter who is dying." Jairus shows honor to Jesus. He falls at his feet. He acknowledges the authority that Jesus has, the power Jesus has. Now, we don't know if, as a religious leader, he agreed with everything Jesus taught. Some religious leaders were fully on board with Jesus, others were not. We don't know if Jairus had some disagreements with Jesus. What we do know is that he honored him. He acknowledged the value, the worth, the dignity. He gave respect to Jesus. And so Jesus travels with him. When they reach his home, the girl has died, but Jesus raises her to life. Immediately after this, Jesus leaves Jairus' home and travels to his hometown, not Bethlehem, where he grew up, or where he was born, but to Nazareth, where he grew up. And it's kind of like the hometown boy returns. And everyone at first is excited. They've heard the stories of Jesus healing. They've heard about the crowds, and so they're excited to have him there. But things slowly change. And so here's the story in Mark chapter 6, beginning at verse 2. When the Sabbath came, he, Jesus, began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. So it begins with them showing some honor. They're amazed. Where did this man get these great things, they ask? What's this wisdom that he has been given? What are these remarkable miracles that he is performing? So there's some honor, there's some respect that they're giving, but things change. Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. And Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home. He, Jesus, could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The people were offended by Jesus. They suddenly began to see him as just the kid who grew up down the street. The word dishonor here is the Greek word atimos. Atimos means to treat as common, ordinary. This is just the kid who grew up next door. And let's face it, the kid who grows up next door doesn't grow up to be the Messiah. He's just ordinary. He's just common. There's nothing special about him. We don't even know how he got this teaching, but he's just common. He was ordinary. Now the word time, it looks like time, but the word time means to honor. It actually means to value, to hold something as precious. So instead of being common and ordinary, it is valuable, it is precious. There is something unique in a positive way, unique and special about this. It means to respect, to treat someone well. And that's how Jairus treated Jesus. He acknowledges there is something great about you. I may not know everything there is to know about you, Jesus, but I see your authority and I know your power, and you are unique and you are special, and I honor you. He was honored. So when we honor someone, we lift them up. When we dishonor people, we find offense. We devalue them. We look for ways to be offended by them. We assume the worst in them. We seek to tear them down. Dishonor not only tears down people, it destroys relationship, where honor can improve relationships. Think about it. If we are constantly dishonoring someone, if we are constantly criticizing, putting people down, not seeing the value, pretty soon people respond to us in defensive ways. They are offended. They don't treat us with honor, and we just cycle down in ways that dishonor one another. Well, the opposite is also true. If we begin to honor people, maybe we honor someone we completely disagree with, but we honor them. Maybe they begin to act differently. Maybe behaviors change. They respond differently to us. Relationships improve. Honor not only builds up the other person, honor brings healing, hope, strength, and power to relationships. But you might be thinking to yourself, but they don't deserve honor. I mean, look at how they live. Look at what they've said. Look at what they've done. They don't deserve honor. Well, here's the thing. Respect is earned. Honor is given. Honor is given. Honor has more to do with how we see people. We now see people as not common or ordinary. We now see people as valuable and precious, created uniquely in the image of God. We now see people differently, so we respond differently. Honor has more to do with how we live than how someone else lives. So even though you may completely disagree with someone, and even though they may not be the most honorable, we are still called to honor them. Honor is given. Honor is a reflection of our heart, our life, our faith. So Romans 12 says we are to honor one another, our relationships with one another. Instead of looking to be offended, we need to look to build up. But there are 4 places in Scripture where we are called to show particular, intentional honor. The first of those, as you might guess, is we are called to honor God. We are to honor God because God is God. The first 3 of the 10 commandments, you shall have no other God before me, because there is no other God. And so we honor God for who God is, all-powerful, almighty, full of honor and glory. I mean, we honor God for who he is. The second commandment says, don't create any images or idols. Don't worship any idols. Don't try to take God and put it into a unique little form, because then you're just limiting God. That doesn't honor God. Don't even use God's name in ways that dishonor. God is so holy and righteous and just and loving and powerful and gracious. Because of who God is, we honor God. Worship is one way we honor God. You're here in part today to honor God. We honor God through songs of praise and thanksgiving. We honor God through our prayers, through prayers of confession, prayers of thanksgiving. We honor God through being attentive to God's word, to listening to what it says, and worshiping God and honoring God. We can't just do it with our lips. We can't just go through the motions. My hope is that when we gather for worship, we are intentional in putting ourselves in a place where we can, with our heart, mind, soul, and spirit, honor who God is. Make ourselves available to the fullness and the presence of God. And say, God, we're here because of who you are. We are called to honor God through our worship. And there's no one right or wrong way to do that, however we feel connected to God. One of the things I love about Faith Church is that we have 2 very different and unique worship services, because some people truly honor God through those classic hymns of the church, but there are others who really enter into the presence of God through more contemporary songs that allow us to pour our heart out to God. But I love what Jess said. It can't just be an emotional experience. It also has to be our understanding. We honor God because of who God is, not because of how I feel. And so there's no one right way to worship. We worship God in a variety of ways, and when we do, we honor him. We also honor God through our giving. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9 says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. So why would we honor God through giving? Well, we honor God. One way we honor God is to live the way that God lives. I mean, I hope Davy will grow up to be like David. Is your father also David? And he'll grow up to be like Grandpa David. That you want to emulate them. You want to act like them. We honor them by wanting to live like them. We honor God by wanting to be like God. And God is one who gives. God's very nature is to give, to love. So it's in love that God gave life to the world, creation. God gave us life. God then provides everything we need for life and for life to be good. Even when we turned away in sin, God sent his one and only Son, Jesus, so that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. God gave us a way of salvation, which is Jesus Christ. God's very nature is to give, and so we honor God by emulating God, by living the way God lives, and so we honor God by giving. Many different ways we can give. We can give our first to God, our best to God, whatever that might look like. We can offer a percentage to God. We talk about a tithe or a portion of our life. We can also give to others, to those in need. We honor God when we give to those in need around us. And so we are called to honor God. The Bible also tells us we are to honor our parents. Go back to the Ten Commandments, and it says in the Ten Commandments, Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Do you know this is the only commandment that comes with a promise? Honor your father and mother, and if you do, things are going to go well for you in the land that I'm giving you. Honor your father and mother. There's going to be a blessing for your parents, a blessing for you, a blessing on your family, a blessing on the community. There's a promise of blessing if you honor them. That's how important honoring parents is to God. Now, I'm always reminded when I read the Ten Commandments that these were not written to little children. These were written to adults. So that means honoring our parents does not mean teaching children to obey their parents. This is much more to adults to care for their aging parents, to honor them. There would be no one taking care of them if the children did not provide care. What does it mean for us to honor our father and mother as they get older? How do we show honor to them? But it is also teaching our children how to honor, how to listen to obey. Let's be clear that honoring a father and mother doesn't mean that we submit to abusive situations. Parents are also called to honor their children, to love their children, to care for them faithfully. And so we always have to keep that in mind, that there are times that we might need to step away from difficult and destructive dynamics of relationship, but can we do that in honorable ways? One of the things that always kind of troubles me about current, television or movies or other things is that so often parents are portrayed as buffoons that no youth or child needs to listen to or obey. I'm thinking, how can we begin to turn some of that around so that we can show parents in the fullness of who they are, which sometimes can be goofy or silly or, we all were those youth who just rolled our eyes when our parents said or did something that embarrassed us, and we've all been there. But how do we begin to change a culture so that we look at honoring parents instead of dishonoring them? Honor your father and mother, and if you do, there's a blessing that goes with that. The third group of people that the Bible tells us to honor are those in authority, particularly those in civil authority. Romans chapter 13, the Apostle Paul says specifically we are to obey those in authority over us and to show them honor. We are to honor our leaders. Now remember, Paul's writing to a church that is being oppressed by the Roman leaders, the civil authority, the government, persecuting Christians, oppressing the Jewish people. That's the culture that Paul is saying, even though we're going through these difficult times, we are still called to honor those in authority. So let's talk about our culture today. How are we doing with this? I mean, really? Are we honoring those in authority over us? This might be the one place where we see the most dishonor. I personally don't know why anyone would want to go into public service, because anything and everything you ever said or did, or someone thought you said or did, or someone thinks that you're thinking, is now out in the public realm to be picked over, evaluated, critiqued, and criticized. Every thought, word, and action. It is a thankless job. And so if nothing else, maybe what we need to do is say thank you, whether we agree with them or not, and to show them honor. We, as Faith Church, are honored, and I do mean that sincerely. We are honored to have many public servants, government leaders, as part of our congregation. State representative, school board members, a previous mayor of Bellefonte, county commissioners, county workers, local judges are all members and active parts of our congregation. And when I think of them being willing to step into what is a thankless job these days, I am grateful. I'm grateful that they're willing to step into the chaos. I'm grateful and thankful that they have at least a thick enough skin to be able to deflect many of the things that are said about them, things that I've heard and I know are just completely not true. I am grateful that they're willing to serve. We need to find ways to honor those in public service. We always need to be honoring, EMTs, firefighters, and in many ways that's easy to do. We never do it enough. It's easy to show them honor because of what they do. It's a lot harder to show honor to someone who might be on the other side of the political spectrum. We don't necessarily like what they're doing, what they're promoting, what they're trying to get through legislatively. How do we show them honor? Does it mean that we don't have our own voice in the public sphere? We do, and we can use that voice. We can promote, the political agenda that we feel is best for our nation and for our people. And we have the opportunity to speak into that, which is wonderful. But we need to figure out how to do this without dishonoring others. How do we honor those? How do we honor those who are in authority in the public sphere, who are in authority over us? Maybe if we honored them more, we would have more honorable leaders. Maybe if we honored them more, the tone and tenor of our political conversations as a culture would change. Maybe our part is to simply start by honoring those who are in authority. The last area, and this is a little awkward, but the last area, the fourth area the Bible says we need to show honor is to pastors, those who are spiritual leaders. This is not me saying this. This is 1 Timothy chapter 5. It says, the elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those who whose work is preaching and teaching. I want to be clear, I included this not because I think I need to be honored more. In fact, what I will say is that my time as a pastor, but particularly as a leader of this congregation, I have felt more honored and valuable and supported and loved and cared for here than I have ever felt in my life. So thank you for showing that kind of honor. What I want to do is just expand that out a little bit because it talks about those who direct the affairs of the church well, that those people are worthy of double honor. And there are people who serve in the life of this church that kind of go under the radar. We don't see them. We don't understand what they do, but their service makes this church what it is. And I literally would be nothing without all of those who serve. One group I think of particularly in this moment are those who work very hard to make me look and sound as good as I do. And that is our media people who are in the room behind us, hopefully. There we go. There they are. Can we honor them today a little bit? And those at the back of the soundboard, the lights, I mean, if it wasn't for them, they could just bring my microphone down and I would not be able to communicate. Or they could turn all the lights out and you wouldn't be able to see me. So I am particularly grateful for them being there and doing a job that is so important. And one of the things I love is that a lot of those who are volunteering that you've seen and that you see back there are our youth. If you want to get to know some amazing young people, talk to Justin about serving on the media team because half the team or more are young people because technology is like their first language. It's like my third language. So if you want to get to know and interact with some amazing young people, I'd invite you to check out what they are doing. And then there are the volunteers that we don't see on Sunday morning that are back working with our children right now. We have amazing children's ministry workers, Sunday school and the nursery, children's church. Our children are growing up in a culture that no longer honors religion in many ways, and so we are working very hard as a church, many churches are, to teach them the honor of God, how to honor Jesus. We're trying to show them a way that is not seen in the culture and in the community at times. And so they have a lot of work to do, and they do it very well, and they do it very faithfully. Particularly, I am grateful, and I think that anyone who will show up on Friday and work at the fifth quarter needs double honor. I will say they need triple honor. Because the fifth quarter, I say as a pastor, you know, I do a little bit of everything, and there's certain things that I really enjoy doing, so I gravitate towards that. There's certain things that I don't enjoy doing as much, and so we hire people for that. Fortunately, thankfully, we can do that here. But the fifth quarter is not my area of giftedness. I love youth. I'm so glad we have this. I think it's great, but it's a little chaotic. And if you know youth, after a football game, or maybe they had a soda or two, they don't stand still for more than 2 seconds. And so when you're at the fifth quarter, it's just constant motion. And my anxiety just goes through the roof. And people look at me and said, "You should go home, Pastor. Like, we don't want to deal with you." And I'm like, I'm out of here because you are here. And I mean that genuinely. I am so grateful for those who volunteer at things like the fifth quarter, because I can't do that. I'm just not emotionally put together that way. And I am so grateful that they are here to do that. And just to be clear, it's just not here. When I was in Altoona, we had a youth organization that asked if they could use our church for a kind of like a fifth quarter. Every Friday night they would come. And I went once, and because the kids went inside, outside, 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 all night long, my blood pressure went up, and I said, his name was Jim. I said, Jim, you got this. We fully support you. I can't be here. And he said, I understand, and thank you for the building. And I am so grateful for those who are willing to step in. And I'm amazed that so many of those who volunteer for the fifth quarter are older than I am. It's not something that just young people. We have more retirees, people over 60, 65, 70, who love coming and being at the fifth quarter. And to them, all I can say is thank you, sincerely, thank you. And then there are our mission team, people who are willing to go out into our community and use the gifts and skills they have to help other people. Just this past week, I heard someone say that angels really do have names. 2 of them are Doug and Larry. Doug and Larry are part of our toolbox ministry and our mission team, and they, along with so many others, are always out in our community, helping those in our church, outside of the church, do the small projects that need to be done in people's lives. If you want to honor them, a great way to honor them would be to sign up for the mission week. You can't be here all week, it's okay. Come for an afternoon. Come for a morning. Oftentimes they're having dinner together. Come to dinner and just thank them. Honor the work that they do. Then there are the women who work in our prayer quilt ministry. One of the interesting things about these women is that they never really see the full fruit of their work. They see the finished product of a prayer quilt, but they don't get to see the family receive that at baptism. They don't get to see a prayer quilt given to someone who's dying of cancer. They don't see the tears and the comfort, that encouragement that it brings when that quilt is opened and placed on someone's shoulders or over their lap. They never see the full fruits of their ministry, and yet they work hard to produce more and more quilts and blankets that we are able to give away. That just scratches the surface. There are Sunday school teachers and small group leaders. If you're part of a small group, have you honored the leader in some way? There's a crew that come in and cut the grass here, and I am so grateful for them because you don't want me on a riding mower. The grass would not look good, and I'd probably be in the hospital. But there are people who give their time every week to come in and cut the grass. And then there are those who come and pull weeds in all of our bedding and in our courtyard. And if you know anything about pulling weeds, it is a never-ending job. I can do it for about 5 minutes. And then again, like that, oh my gosh, it's never going to be done. There's a whole bed here. I get very anxious. And so I'm so grateful. And when I see them out here on a Saturday morning in the hot sun, I thank them. There are so many people who make this church special. So many that we don't see, so many that we do see, and an amazing worship team, an amazing music ministry. Forget about showing pastors honor. What I would ask of you is show honor to those who serve among you, and they are everywhere. Show them double honor. I don't know what that means, but show it to them. Figure out for yourself what it means to show them double honor. There are 4 areas set aside for us to honor: God, clearly, parents, those in authority, which might be the most challenging one, and then those in the life of the church that make the church so special. But ultimately, the Bible says, honor one another. As I said earlier, honoring our parents comes with a blessing. But the reality is that when we honor one another, we're all blessed. There is a blessing that comes when we honor other people. If we go back to the stories of Jesus that we heard from the Gospel of Mark, when Jairus came in and honored Jesus, Jesus raised her daughter to life. When Jesus went to his hometown and he was dishonored by the crowd, it said specifically that Jesus could not do any miracles there. I don't know all the dynamics of why Jesus couldn't do miracles. Jesus is all powerful. I don't understand that fully. Here's what I do understand. Where there's honor, there's blessing. Where there's no honor, there's no blessing. When we honor one another, we're blessed. We're blessed in many ways. Relationships are blessed. Families are blessed. Community is blessed. The country is blessed. When we don't honor others, there's no blessing. Maybe even when we look at where we are politically, maybe we're missing out on a whole lot of blessing because we just aren't willing to honor those we disagree with. When we honor one another, there's always a blessing. There's a blessing because we're lifting someone else up. They may begin to act, lead, live differently. That blesses other people. There's a return blessing to us. We honor someone else and we're blessed simply because we're living more into the fullness of Jesus. That has its own blessing. If we look around at our culture today, look at social media, listen to the news, and lament the reality of the criticism, the condemnation, and the cancellation that we see all around us. Maybe the answer is that we just start to learn how to honor one another. Because if I begin to change my own relationships and the people around me, they begin to change perhaps their relationships and the people around them, who then change their relationships and the people around them. And maybe there's a domino effect. Maybe there's this impact that one person can begin to make a change in a culture. One church can begin to make a change in a community. I just want to invite you this week. Evaluate some of your relationships. Where do you feel like you're dishonoring in your attitudes, in your thoughts, in your words, your actions? How can you turn that to honor one another? And then find a person, find a group, find someone that you can shower them with honor. It can be as simple as just saying thank you for what you're doing. It can be showing up and serving alongside of them. It can be sending a note of appreciation. Whatever it is, I just want to invite you, show honor to someone. And begin to see how that honor changes you. And trust God to use that honor to change others and to change our world. Would you pray with me?